All right, so let me go ahead and start. My name is Richard Capone. I'm the CEO of Let's Go Learn, and today's webinar is going to be AI in Action Supporting Special Education. So we are going to be doing an action-packed webinar, about 30 minutes, and we're going to cover a lot of basics. Now, AI is a hot topic, so I want this really to be a fundamental nuts and bolts webinar where you'll learn about some different stuff, get you thinking, and starting to figure out how do I operationalize it for my own department or organization. So first of all, just a little background. Let me click on this. All right, just background on myself. So I've been involved in technology my whole life. I had the first Mac when I was in high school, and that allowed me to do desktop publishing, and eventually where you had proprietary equipment changing over to computer-based stuff. Then in Adobe, I was doing video editing, learning how to make video stuff work in the real world, and then eventually when I started Let's Go Learn with Dr. McCollum at UC Berkeley, we were doing computer adaptive assessment before that term even existed, and we were trying to make it work over a modem. So my whole life, I've been really adapting technology to work. And today we're faced with a new technology, which is AI. So I'm real excited to be here working with people like yourselves. My expertise has always been trying to make new cutting edge technology work in the real world. And right now, it is a little raw, AI, I'll be honest with you. So here's our agenda for today. AI basics and terms. So we're going to go over some of the basic terms that would be good for you to learn. Then we're going to talk about the prompt. The prompt is really important. And then I'm going to go over 5 steps to start AI in your organization or department. And then finally, I'm going to show you AI in action in the special education setting. And then we'll have Q&A. All right, so this is going to take, all of this will take 30 minutes. So first of all, what is AI, right? A computer system that can perform tasks typically requiring human intelligence, right? Simply put. Now, there's 2 types of AI. There's narrow AI, and it's really interesting because over the past few years, I don't know if you realize, but facial recognition, autonomous driving, credit card fraud detection, and speech recognition has really gotten good, right? My phone is so good now at recognizing my voice. Also, the unlock on my phone is really fast. This is all driven by narrow AI. People don't realize that. So narrow AI is really a limited set of constraints, and it does something very, very well. Now, general AI doesn't exist right now. That would be where AI was really better than a human at all levels. And right now, that does not exist. Okay? So that's a couple basics on the background of AI. Now, when we were calling people to invite them to this webinar, we got some interesting responses. Some educators were really a little fearful, and they're like, why are you doing AI? But I want to provide this slide because this might be necessary if you're talking to your own people in your organization and they say, look, you shouldn't do AI. We shouldn't do AI right now. We should hold back. But here's what you need to tell them. You can't get the genie back in the bottle, in the lamp, excuse me. The genie is out, right? And your teachers are already using AI. Your students are already using it. Someone will do something stupid. Now, this is a sad reality, right? So AI, it has to be, we have to tackle it because someone's going to do something stupid. And once it's free, you can't stop it, right? And so containment isn't possible. And so I think it's really important for all of us to realize this and then move forward and come up with policies and procedures moving forward, all right? The first part of AI is GPT. What is generative pre-trained transformer? What does that mean? Okay. So first of all, the generative means it generates content based on input from the user. The second part is that an AI is pre-trained based on all the information on the public internet, right? So I'm going to talk about this in a second. So the AI is allowing you to enter input, and it's grabbing information that's publicly available, and then the transformer is what allows it to interact with us. So there's a natural language processing, and you guys have heard of GPT-4. That's what became really popular and when it became mainstream. Now, right now, GPT-4 Omega just came out, which is really an audio version of it. But that's what GPT stands for. It's really interesting. Now, let me jump into some terminologies related to this. All right, so the first basic term you want to know is what is natural language processing, right? That's NLP. Now that's the real basics of AI. And it's important to realize that AI is not true intelligence. It's literally natural language processing and prediction. So if I say, "Good morning, how are you?" right? The response would be, "I'm doing great. How about yourself?" That is literally how AI responds because it looks at statistically what is the next most likely response. And so if we realize that there's not true intelligence right now, it's just predictive based on language, it really does explain a lot. Now, here's the other term I want you to know, everyone needs to know about, is AI hallucinations. This is a real term, and because it's so bad. When AI gets totally messed up and makes these nonsensical responses, we call that an AI hallucination. And that's why this next piece, is a way of overcoming that. It's prompts or prompt engineering, right? So by having good prompts, having people at your organization who know how to write prompts or really getting prompt engineering certification, it allows us to contain and get better results with AI. Now, one point I forgot to mention is just in AI hallucination, it'll sound totally confident. And this is where the problem is. So if you ask it something, it'll respond like it knows exactly what the answer is. And here, that's the problem because you don't realize that it's not the answer and it's maybe really bad or a dangerous answer, right? Okay, so the prompt. Why is this important? So prompts are really, really important because they're going to allow us to get better results. But there's also 3 factors I want to mention: data privacy, bias mitigation, and transparency. If your data on the internet overall has a societal bias, right? When you ask it something, you're going to get that bias back, right? And then plus you also don't know sometimes how does it come up with that answer because it's looking at across the entire internet. So this is where you can control and contain this through the proper prompt. And so it's really important. Now, of course, also I mentioned data privacy because, again, when you're entering something into an AI engine, you are putting it out there. And so you want to be aware of data privacy, especially if your teachers and students are using it. Now, what is a prompt engineer? So a prompt engineer is really just a formal term or title for a position of somebody who they're making it their role or task to guide the rest of the organization in prompts, right? There's actually a certification you can get as well, and that's not a bad idea to see if maybe somebody in your organization wants to do that. Indicates a level of expertise. But the other part of that is just getting a prompt committee going at your organization. So maybe you want to have a special education teacher who is really excited about AI. Maybe they take the lead and they head up the committee and bring in some other people. So this is really important. Okay, so here are 5 steps that I recommend you all do in order to sort of get your feet wet at your organization with AI. So the first thing is define how your organization can and cannot use AI. And so this is important, right? And you could just flat out say, hey, I do not want you to be using it for writing lesson plans, or you can under these rules. You could use it to help refine and review materials. You need to define all that, right? You don't want to just leave it open. Another point here is going to be setting up easy to find and follow guidelines for your prompts, right? So this is an important thing to do. And I'm going to cover 1 and 2, give you guys some examples on this. The other points here are providing vetted resources for teachers to use. So if there are great AI resources out there, collect it all. Make sure everyone could collectively review it and share it. Operationalize AI use by providing examples. I think when you say, hey, it's okay to use this in this particular situation, spell it out. Don't assume that somebody's going to know how to use AI to help them with lesson planning, right? Because they may be doing some, asking it some bad prompts that are going to give them bad results. All right, 5 is set up initial and ongoing training and support. So again, you're going to have people in your organization who are real excited about it. Get those people to help train other people, and you guys will get my slides as well. There's lots of other materials too. And so, I think it's the great thing to go, these 5 steps. Now, right now, that tip sheet, the QR code, you can scan that, or you'll get the slides tomorrow, and you can get a tip sheet that expand on these 5 points. All right, so let me talk about 1 and 2. So first of all, I did get this from Dr. Jordan Smith, who's a teacher in California. He's a math teacher and department head who's really excited about AI, had some great conversations, and this is his 10 lists of how you can use AI in special education. And right now, also, I think there's a QR code I put up there. He did a webinar just talking about how he was using it to review the California math framework that was updated from year to year. So normally he said the process took him like 20 hours when he had to review the changes, but he did it in a few minutes. So it's quite an interesting example. But anyway, these are the areas that I'd say you could really use it in: personalized learning, data-driven insights, et cetera, et cetera. I'm not going to go into all of these right now. All right, the next one I want to show is setting up your organization's prompt. Okay, so this is actually an interesting one, and I am going to go into detail here. So this intranet that I have is a sample intranet that we set up. It's public, so you can scan that and you can share it with other people in your organization. Let me go ahead and click on it. All right. So why do you need to do this? The reason why is, I mentioned before that AI looks across the whole internet. So if you're going to ask it to help you with lesson planning, if you do that, you don't know where it's going to grab it from. It could be grabbing it from states that have very different standards than yours. It could be grabbing it from a homeschool site that maybe has a different instructional approach than you do. So that's where prompts are really important. And this is really a simple way for you all to collaborate. So on this example intranet site, right, an internal internet site for a school district, you would have different categories: IEP reports, how do you interpret Let's Go Learn reports, lesson planning, and maybe content prompts when pulling content using AI, right? So let me go ahead and show you an example. Let's click on lesson planning. So if I click on this, it's just opening up a Google Doc, and here is my prompt, right? So you may tell your teachers, when researching lessons for me, use the latest California content standards as published by the California Department of Education, blah, 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 blah. Our school district uses science of reading principles. We use Eureka Math. We follow the high leverage practices from the CEC. So these are some different guidelines you would put in there. So in theory, the teacher would say, okay, every time I ask ChatGPT or whatever GPT I'm using, I can just go ahead and copy this, right? And then I would go over here and I would go ahead and paste this in. And then I would say, please give me a project-based lesson to use with fifth graders on short vowel, right? Boom. So I have that prompt already there, and then I type in, my specific request, and now it's going to go ahead and give me an idea. Here we go. Project-based plan called Vowel City. Tells me what I need, how much time. Again, it's a way to get some ideas on something, right? And also, a positive level, I have this standard prompt that as a district, you're going to vet and maintain and update over time, all right? So that's one example, all right? It's still going right there. Now, I'm using ChatGPT Plus, which is a paid version. It's $20 a month, but I think also organizations can buy it for all of your teachers. And so it might be something you guys want to investigate as well. All right, let's go back over here. So another one over here would be an IEP report. So let's say you were going to allow your teachers to upload an IEP report that's been de-identified, and you want them or allow them to analyze it. This would be I know like Dr. Smith did it, where he was the general ed teacher, but he received the IEP reports and he had to execute them. So he would de-identify them, upload them, and then he would ask questions to help him more quickly find activities and maybe come up with some ideas to customize something for a student, right? So here again, in this particular example, my hypothetical prompt would be, an IEP is a student's individual education program. I'm in California. Our IEPs are written at the start of the school year in the fall. They are good for a year. When looking at an IEP, be aware of the date on it and the current date on which you are being asked to evaluate the IEP. Be sure to reflect the accommodations listed in the IEP, blah, 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 right? So again, these are some common sense things you would want someone to consider when evaluating an IEP, but this has to be put in there because it's interesting. AI is smart in a way, but it's also sometimes very forgetful. You have to be very specific with it, right? I think because it has so much information, it doesn't know what to process unless you tell it specifically. So this would be a great thing. I would take this, copy that, and then I would maybe upload an IEP, and then I'd have this guidelines there when I do my specific request. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, now let me show you some stuff with Let's Go Learn. So this is really interesting. For some of you who are using Let's Go Learn, you know that our data is really, really precise and it's very deep, right? So if I'm inside of account right now, if I were to look at one of these students, let's take a look at Heidi, and I would take a look at the special ed report. This is how we would train you to use our data. You'd say, okay, I want to go ahead and write an IEP and for math. I want to look at numbers and operations. Here's the present levels of the student across this. I want to toggle and take a look at what skills I should be working on next. I hit refresh, right? There it is. I could also go ahead and if I wanted to download a report, I would go to Heidi and I would say, show me the detailed report. Run the report. And now this is like a 10-page report that literally shows the scope and sequence of 44 subtests and exactly where the student's at. So this student needs to work right here, right there. In fractions, they need to work in this area. It goes on and on and on, right? So very detailed. Now, if a teacher wanted to go ahead and manually adjust this, right? They wanted to say, look, I want to use ChatGPT to help me. This is a manual prompt. Now I wrote these right here, or we did as a team, and I would take, I'm going to go ahead and take the interpretation for the math detail report. So I'd take this text, this prompt, I'd copy it, and I'm going to go over to ChatGPT, and let's start a new one here. And I already have a student's report. This report has been de-identified, so this feature is not live for us yet, but we are going to be de-identifying our report so that there'll be an option that says download a de-identified version. So if I open this up, a de-identified version just has the student's name, no date of birth, no teacher or anything else. So it's really basic, right? So you can't tell who the student is. So I would go ahead, take this de-identified report, drag it into ChatGPT, and then I'm going to paste that prompt that I made and then said, please look at the instructions above and find the lowest 10 skills / concepts that I should work on for Kevin. I'm going to be very specific, by the way. Okay, I feel like sometimes ChatGPT is like my kids. I'll tell them things and they don't listen. But please look at the instructions above on how to interpret Let's Go Learn reports and find the lowest 10 skills concepts that I should work on for Kevin. All right, boom. Now, I've done this a lot of times, right? And it's actually interesting. It actually is pretty accurate. I mean, well, it is accurate, but you have to get the prompts correct. So right here, okay, this student need to work on decimal place value, subtraction of whole numbers, a one-digit divisor and remainder equivalent fractions. So it's going through and it's pulling out the skills. Now I may say, okay, well, maybe I don't like some of these. Maybe I want it to refine it. I could tell it to do that. Or if I think these are good, I could say, okay, well, go ahead and rewrite these, into SMART goals. Our SMART goals follow the format of, let's see, Kevin will demonstrate mastery at the 80% level when tested on skill X. Okay? Okay, so now it rewrote all of these decimal place value. Kevin will demonstrate mastery at the 80% level when tested on identifying the place value of decimals. So it went through and took all those and rewrote it into my SMART goal language. So this is what's, the language processing is incredible here. Now, if somebody also had a bunch of goals and they wrote them out loosely and they're working in Word, they could also paste it in there and say, hey, rewrite these into the SMART goal format, and here's our SMART goal format. So you might want another prompt here saying SMART goal format. So maybe you can help fine tune that prompt for your team. But again, I think it takes a little practice, and so you want a place where people can start collaborating and storing stuff. Anyway, and then here's the one last thing I want to show you. This is the Let's Go Learn GPT. So we created our own GPT that it's actually public. It's called LGL Report Expert. You could search for it on GPT Plus and you could find it, but I warn you, it is in beta right now. So in this GPT, what I did, or what we did, is I'm going to edit it and show you. You can create your own. We configure it. And in this configuration, we uploaded different files. So this is a definition of atom. This is the phonics for Spanish and English, the sequence of how you teach the phonics skills. So we have just a bunch of information here, and there'll be more files we upload it. But in theory, this is the documents and the information we think would make a GPT better at interpreting the Let's Go Learn report. So it's pretty cool, and there's a lot you can do. Okay, so let me go back to my slides, and I think we're going to take questions. All right. Okay, so questions. Let's see. How are you going to ensure privacy in your use of AI? So that's a good question. So one of the things we're going to try to do, if we allow a user in our system to select goals and say rewrite these within our system, we can actually allow it so that the student's name never goes into ChatGPT, because we could become the layer between your teachers and ChatGPT, and we just sort of filter it out. Anytime we send something in, we say student first name, and then it comes back in. So that's our strategy over the summer, is to be integrating some AI features like that. And the first area would be into our IEP tool, because that's one of those ones where people want to be able to write SMART goals. They want to be able to store stuff. And so we want to really help with that process. So that's a great question. Okay, if AI can have hallucinations, why would we want to use it to help write an IEP? That's a great question. I would agree. You want to be careful about hallucinations, but this is where hallucinations happen when you just ask it something without the right prompts. So if I'm giving it a narrow task, like here are the goals I want to work on, please rewrite these into my SMART goals, it's not going to do a hallucination on that, right? It's going to be very, very contained. But if I say, here is Richard's IEP, please come up with some activities you think would be good for him. That is so broad. And if I don't put some kind of prompt in there to contain it, then you might get hallucinations, because it's going to say, well, what's a good lesson for Richard? It's going to, it might make it up, right? So those are good questions. Oh, in my prompt, did the red colors mean anything? No. In that prompt, I just colored those words red so that you guys could see that I put in my state, what state I was from and what kind of curriculum we're using. But it doesn't really interpret that color. That was just more for me to show you how it looks and where you would change things. That's a great question. So the next question I see is, are you going to integrate AI into your current system? I sort of answered this, so maybe it's a little redundant, but yes, we are. I think the natural place for us to put it into is the IEP tool, just because our data is so deep. We want to be able to sort of help people. It'll be a beta feature as well, so it's not something we're just going to turn on automatically. It'd be the school district would have to authorize it, right? Okay, would a new AI IEP tool have built-in prompts to help narrow a search? So right now, there's a lot of room for this when it talks about trying to integrate AI into our existing system. So I don't necessarily know right now. We would have some kind of follow-up. So let's say you asked it to rewrite some goals that you selected into SMART goals. We would allow it to have some kind of reiteration like, hey, please tweak this or make them shorter, make them longer. So yes, we would always do some kind of thing where you can do a refresh, because that's the whole thing about GPT is when you're in that window, you can keep having a conversation with it and have it adjust things, right? You sort of saw how I did that. Okay. Well, I don't see any other questions. Right now, I want to give you a couple other things right here. If you scan this QR code, this is our AI in education on YouTube. It's our playlist. This one right here will allow you to talk to one of our ed consultants at our company. And then also I did give you a couple references. There's a book, AI Mastery Blueprint for Education, and that's the book I mentioned by Dr. Jordan Smith. And so that's a nice book to read if you're trying to get some background. Schoolai.com is a really cool site. If you haven't heard of it, it allows you to talk to an AI like they're a historical figure. So it could be a fun thing for you to add to those AI resources, right? Because it's a free resource for school districts, for teachers to use. Is one of those things that's out there. But there's a lot more, I'm sure, as well. And so as things pop up, we'll let you know. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's webinar. I don't see any more. So thank you so much. And you will be getting the recording and the slides either tomorrow or the day after that. Thank you so much for attending. Bye-bye.